Have you noticed something odd? Your smartest friends are growing silent. Colleagues who once shone brightly at work are stepping back. High achievers, always present at gatherings, are now just names in your memory. They don't complain. They don't make a fuss. They simply vanish. Is this just a random coincidence or a sign of a quiet, widespread trend happening everywhere, steadily, unnoticed? You're watching this video not out of mere curiosity. It's because you feel it, a void, a strange stillness. And maybe, just maybe, you're one of those quietly pulling away. This isn't a story about failures or people shirking responsibility. It's about the sharpest minds, those who can see through society's mask, and they no longer want to. Play a role in a drama that's lost its purpose. Why is this happening? Why are the people who should be leading, inspiring, and changing the world silently stepping off the stage? Join me on a journey to uncover 7 profound, rarely spoken reasons why the brightest minds are withdrawing from society. And perhaps, after watching, you'll start to wonder, am I walking that same path? This moment changes everything, because once you see the cracks in the facade, they become impossible to ignore. Reason number 1. They see the hollow depth of social norms. Social interaction used to be the glue of society. It meant sitting down with a friend for coffee, having hours-long conversations that touched on philosophy, purpose, and shared vulnerability. It meant building bonds that were rooted in understanding, not performance, but somewhere along the way, something shifted. Socializing has become more about image than intimacy, about optics over authenticity. And for intelligent individuals, this change is not just uncomfortable, it's disheartening. Today, conversations often feel like a carefully choreographed dance, where everyone knows the moves, but no one knows why they're dancing. Politeness replaces honesty. Buzzwords replace insight. There is a strange emptiness at the heart of many interactions, a hollowness that deep thinkers feel acutely. They observe people engaging in endless banter, constantly talking yet saying nothing, jokes without meaning, compliments without sincerity, questions asked without the slightest interest in the answer. It's not that intelligent people think they're too good for small talk, it's that small talk feels like mental malnutrition. Imagine being a world-class chef, forced to eat dry crackers for every meal. That's what shallow conversation feels like to someone who thinks deeply and lives from the core of their being. They are not looking to impress or dominate in dialogue. They are searching for connection, real, soul-level connection that awakens ideas and ignites meaning. Unfortunately, modern social norms often penalize depth. A person who brings up deep topics at a party is seen as too intense. Someone who wants to question the assumptions behind daily life may be labeled weird or antisocial. Society rewards those who keep things light, keep things moving, and don't dig too deep. But the intelligent mind can't help but dig. It's wired for exploration of thoughts, of values, of existential truth. Over time, this creates a kind of social fatigue. Deep thinkers begin to dread group settings, not because they're shy or awkward, but because they can predict the patterns, the same old loops of meaningless chatter that drain energy rather than inspire. It becomes easier to stay home, to read, to think, or to engage one-on-one with someone who gets it. The withdrawal isn't rejection of people, but rejection of social performance. They're not antisocial. They're anti-facade. This isn't about being better than others. It's about needing more than the average interaction provides. It's about a hunger for authenticity in a world flooded with pretenses. The silence of an intelligent person in a room full of casual talkers isn't rudeness. It's the sound of someone who's tuned into a different frequency, one that values substance over surface, honesty over harmony, and connection over convention, so they fade quietly, gently. Not because they don't care about people, but because they care too deeply to fake it anymore. Reason number 2. They despise herd mentality. To an intelligent mind, one of the most terrifying sentences in any language is, "Everyone else is doing it." Rather than offering comfort, that phrase sends a chill down their spine. It signals the abandonment of independent thought in favor of mass conformity. The brilliant individual doesn't just dislike herd mentality, they fear it, because they understand its power, and worse, they understand its consequences. In group settings, they watch as people quickly calibrate their opinions to match the room. Dissent is rare and often punished. The pressure to blend in, to be agreeable, to keep the peace, it's immense. And for someone who values truth, logic, and individual insight, this kind of environment is suffocating. They see groupthink in action and recognize how it stifles innovation, buries difficult truths, and rewards mediocrity dressed as consensus. They've experienced it firsthand. They've offered ideas that challenge the status quo, only to be met not with curiosity but with discomfort or hostility. They've seen how quickly people turn from ideas to identity, how disagreeing with a view becomes a personal offense. It's not just that the herd doesn't want to think critically, it's that it actively resists anything that might force it to. And so, intelligent people are left with a dilemma. They can stay quiet to maintain belonging, betraying their mind in the process, or they can speak up and face social rejection, losing their tribe, most eventually realize that neither option is sustainable. So they choose a third path. They step away from the herd entirely. They begin building their own small circle, often made of other independent thinkers. It's not about elitism, it's about survival. In this circle, questions are encouraged, assumptions are challenged, and disagreement is not seen as danger, but as depth. These relationships are fewer, but far more rewarding. They don't require the constant performance of agreement. They allow people to be fully themselves. The intelligent person also knows that the herd isn't inherently evil, it's just human. People conform because it feels safe, because isolation is painful, because thinking independently is risky. They have compassion for this, but they cannot participate in it. They are driven by a different compass, one that doesn't point toward approval, but toward truth. Over time, their withdrawal becomes noticeable. Not because they make a scene or announce their departure, but because their presence begins to fade from places where groupthink rules. They no longer show up to every gathering. They stop participating in surface-level debates. They don't engage in trends or movements just because everyone else is. And this quiet refusal is powerful. It's not dramatic, but it's deeply radical. In the end, their absence from the herd is not a rejection of people, but of group blindness. It's not superiority, it's integrity. The intelligent mind would rather walk alone in clarity than run with a crowd in confusion. Reason number 3, they're hyper-aware of consumerism's trap-in, a world that equates self-worth with net worth. Intelligent people see through the illusion. They understand that consumerism isn't just a way of life. It's a psychological game designed with precision to keep people anxious, distracted, and spending. To most, the cycle is invisible, but to a deep thinker, it's disturbingly clear. They see the advertising slogans for what they are. Modern-day mantras engineered to program behavior. You deserve it. Treat yourself. Upgrade your life. These aren't just clever lines. They're psychological hooks. They tap into insecurity, amplify fear of missing out, and plant the idea that fulfillment is one purchase away. It's not just about selling a product. It's about selling a version of yourself that you don't yet feel like, but could become if you only had the right thing. The intelligent mind questions that premise. Why do we need to buy something to feel valuable? Why is identity so tied to appearance, status, and spending? Why is success measured in square footage, brand names, and subscription levels? These aren't rhetorical questions. They are alarm bells. And once a brilliant mind starts pulling on that thread, the whole system starts to unravel. They begin to recognize that consumerism isn't just an economic model, it's a cultural ideology. It trains people to equate possessions with purpose. It keeps them on a treadmill. Earn, spend, repeat. It offers dopamine, not meaning, stimulation, not satisfaction, convenience, not connection, and perhaps the most painful part, it works. The system is efficient, seductive, and well-oiled, but intelligent people feel the hollowness beneath the shine. They witness friends racking up debt to project a lifestyle. They see social media feeds filled with curated perfection, masking personal emptiness. They observe how success becomes just another product, something to be marketed and monetized. But what happens when you no longer want to play? Intelligent people start opting out, not necessarily in dramatic ways. They might still shop, own nice things, and enjoy comforts, but their relationship with money, possessions, and status shifts fundamentally. They no longer buy for identity. They buy for utility. They no longer chase luxury. They chase freedom, time to think, space to create, and the energy to live intentionally. And society doesn't always understand this. When someone turns down a high-paying job to pursue a meaningful but modest life, people question their sanity. When someone says no to the upgrade, the flashy car, the latest phone, they're seen as missing out. But to the intelligent mind, what they're actually doing is opting in to clarity, autonomy, and purpose. Their withdrawal isn't laziness or rebellion. It's a conscious choice to not be owned by what they own. They'd rather live with less and feel more than accumulate things that slowly dull their senses. In a world shouting, more is better, intelligent people dare to whisper, enough is everything. Reason number 4. They see the emptiness of digital connection. We live in the most connected era of human history. Yet never before have people felt so emotionally isolated. To many, the contradiction goes unnoticed. But for intelligent individuals, the disconnect is glaring. They can feel it in every group chat, every comment thread, every scrolling session that ends in mental exhaustion rather than satisfaction. The intelligent mind recognizes that digital connection is not the same as human connection, not even close. They see how online interactions prioritize speed over nuance, reaction over reflection. Complex thoughts are reduced to sound bites. Emotions are translated into emojis. Arguments are settled not with logic, but with likes and shares. And the intelligent person begins to sense something dangerous. The medium isn't just delivering the message, it's reshaping it. And in the process, it's reshaping how we relate to each other. Platforms that promise community deliver crowds. Places meant for dialogue reward performance. The deeper the thought, the less engagement it receives. The more controversial or sensational, the more likely it is to go viral. It's a system that elevates the loudest voices, not the wisest ones. The intelligent person finds this deeply troubling, not because they want attention, but because they care about truth. They want discussions that evolve, not arguments that escalate. They want honesty, vulnerability, and intellectual challenge, not filters, hot takes, and toxic debate loops. They try to participate. They post something thoughtful and watch it get ignored, while a meme or outrage post goes viral. They engage in a comment thread and see how quickly it devolves into tribalism. They share something personal and watch it be skimmed past in favor of dopamine-fueled clickbait. Over time, this wears them down. Eventually, they withdraw, not necessarily from all digital spaces, but from the ones where connection has become content. They delete apps, they turn off notifications, they stop tracking followers. They no longer feel the need to be on all the time. And instead, they begin seeking depth again. Not through algorithms, but through intention. They make fewer online connections, but more meaningful ones. They prioritize face-to-face interactions, even if they're rare. A quiet dinner with a friend becomes more fulfilling than any viral post. A single honest email means more than 100 heart emojis. They start to view technology not as an escape, but as a tool, one that must be used consciously or not at all. And while others may see their digital silence as withdrawal or irrelevance, it's actually a form of preservation. They are protecting their attention, their values, and their sanity. They understand that connection without depth is just noise, and they refuse to live in noise. In a world where everyone is shouting for attention, the intelligent person chooses to listen. And in doing so, they rediscover what real connection feels like. Rare, quiet, vulnerable, and human. Reason number 5. They're introspective by nature. In a culture that glorifies doing, thinking is often misunderstood. Society praises hustle, action, results. It rewards visibility, movement, output. But introspection, the act of turning inward, of slowing down to reflect, is too often seen as laziness, hesitation, or even weakness. To the intelligent mind, though, introspection is not a luxury. It's a lifeline. Highly intelligent people are not driven by impulse. They're driven by understanding. And understanding takes time. Time to think, process, and synthesize. They don't just ask what is happening, but why, how, and what does it mean? While others rush from one task to the next, they pause. They observe patterns. They examine motivations, their own and others. This internal world is vast and alive, and without time to explore it, they feel disoriented, detached from themselves and from life. But the modern world leaves little room for reflection. Our days are filled with pings, feeds, multitasking, meetings and notifications. The intelligent mind finds this chaos not just exhausting, but mentally hazardous. Their brain, wired for analysis and integration, can't function properly in constant noise. They don't just need rest, they need quiet. They need solitude. They need space where nothing is demanded of them, so their mind can return to its natural state, inquiry. This doesn't mean they're antisocial. It means they're internally social, deeply connected to their inner dialogue. Time alone is not lonely, it's restorative. It's when the real work happens, when ideas form, when emotions settle, when clarity emerges. Others may fear the silence, but intelligent people welcome it. Because in that silence, they can finally hear the sound of their own thoughts, unfiltered, uncensored, alive. And yet the world often doesn't understand this. If someone pulls back to reflect, they're labeled as distant or disengaged. If they spend the weekend journaling instead of partying, they're seen as boring or withdrawn. But the truth is, their solitude is sacred. It's where they align with their values, where they process the complexity of life, where they find peace in a world that constantly demands more. Over time, intelligent individuals learn to protect this space fiercely. They say no more often. They disappear from group chats, turn off their phones, or decline invitations, not because they don't care, but because they care differently. Their relationships thrive not on constant contact, but on meaningful presence. When they do engage, it's with their full, thoughtful attention. What appears from the outside as detachment is, in fact, deep commitment to truth, to integrity, to self-awareness. In a world drowning in shallow interaction and non-stop distraction, the intelligent person dares to think, dares to feel, dares to be still. And that stillness is not emptiness, it is depth. It is where wisdom grows, where purpose crystallizes, and where the brightest minds quietly prepare to change the world, not through noise, but through understanding. Reason number 6, they feel morally misaligned. One of the heaviest burdens an intelligent person carries isn't intellectual, it's ethical. It's the quiet heartbreak that comes from seeing how often the world rewards the wrong behaviors. For the deeply perceptive, life isn't just a puzzle to solve. It's a moral landscape they're constantly navigating. And far too often, the direction society moves in feels deeply, painfully misaligned with what's right. They notice the patterns that others ignore or rationalize. The liar who gets the promotion, the opportunist who gains power, the ruthless, who are applauded for being driven. Meanwhile, the honest are dismissed as naive, the kind are seen as weak, the idealists are told to grow up. These contradictions are not isolated incidents, they're systemic. And for someone with both intelligence and integrity, this is more than frustrating. It's alienating. The intelligent mind isn't surprised that systems are flawed. They expect that. What unsettles them is how normalized the flaws have become, how quickly people adjust to them, justify them, and even embrace them for personal gain. They watch as politics becomes theater, as business prioritizes short-term profits over human well-being, as media turns tragedy into entertainment. And they feel a deep internal resistance. This isn't how things are supposed to be. But here's the catch. To succeed in these systems often requires moral compromise. Looking the other way, staying silent, playing the game. And that's something the intelligent person struggles with deeply, because they don't just want success. They want alignment. They want to live in a way that matches their values, not violates them. So they start opting out. Not because they can't compete, but because they don't want to win a game that feels fundamentally wrong. They turn down promotions, they leave toxic companies, they walk away from careers that require too much self-betrayal. To some, this looks like underachievement, but to the intelligent mind, it's a radical act of preservation, of soul, of sanity, of self. Of course, this choice isn't easy. It often comes with financial sacrifice, social judgment, and periods of intense isolation. But what they gain in return is priceless. The ability to sleep well, to look themselves in the mirror, to create a life that feels right, even if it doesn't look impressive on paper. In this way, their moral clarity becomes both their compass and their curse. They can't unsee what they've seen. They can't convince themselves that success built on exploitation is really success, and they refuse to trade inner peace for external approval. This misalignment doesn't make them bitter. It makes them bold. They often find new paths, quieter paths, where they can work on things that matter with people who care, for purposes that go beyond personal gain. These paths may not come with applause or prestige, but they come with something better, authenticity. And that authenticity in a world full of performance and compromise is revolutionary. Reason number 7. They're tired of dumbing themselves down. There's a quiet fatigue that settles in the mind of a highly intelligent person. A kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from overwork, but from holding back. From years, sometimes decades, of translating their thoughts into simpler language, downplaying their insights, masking their complexity so others won't feel uncomfortable. It's not ego, it's survival. Because they've learned something hard. Being smart can make people uneasy. From an early age, many intelligent people are told they think too much. They're asked to keep it simple, to stop overcomplicating things. In school, their curiosity is sometimes seen as disruption. In meetings, their questions are interpreted as challenges. In conversations, their depth is met with blank stares or polite nods, and so they adapt. They code switch intellectually. They create a second version of themselves, more agreeable, less intense, easier to digest. But this comes at a cost. Dumbing yourself down, even slightly, chips away at authenticity. Over time, it creates distance, not just from others, but from yourself. You begin to wonder, if I can't be fully seen or understood, am I really here at all? It's a painful question, one that many brilliant minds quietly carry. Eventually, the weight becomes too much. The act of simplifying who they are for the comfort of others feels more draining than the isolation of being misunderstood. So they stop. Not suddenly or dramatically, but gradually. They stop over-explaining. They stop biting their tongue. They stop pretending to be someone they're not. And when they do, something unexpected happens. They become invisible, not literally, of course, but socially. They start to fade. They speak less in groups. They attend fewer gatherings. They share less online. They pull back from the spaces where depth is a liability. To the outside world, it may look like they've gone quiet or disengaged. But inside, they're doing something powerful. They're reclaiming themselves. They start to invest in relationships that don't require performance, in conversations that don't need to be diluted, in environments where they can speak freely, challenge ideas, and dive deep. These spaces are rare, but they exist. And once they find even a few, they no longer settle for less. This withdrawal from broader society isn't arrogance. It's not elitism. It's not resentment. It's self-preservation. Because constantly translating your thoughts to be more palatable is like living in a foreign country and never speaking your native tongue. It's exhausting, and eventually, it's unsustainable. The tragedy is that when intelligent people pull back, society doesn't just lose a voice. It loses a conscience. These are often the people asking the hard questions, pointing out the flaws in the system, refusing to accept that's just how it is. When they go silent, the collective wisdom of the culture takes a hit. And so, the final irony is this. The very thing that makes intelligent people valuable, their complexity, their honesty, their insight, is often the thing that pushes them to the margins, not because they failed to engage, but because the world made it too costly to stay. When intelligent people withdraw, society loses more than just their contributions. It loses its conscience. These are the people who ask uncomfortable questions, who challenge corrupt systems, who refuse to accept that's just how things are as an answer. They're the canaries in the coal mine of civilization, and they're dying. Not literally, but spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. They're becoming invisible, silent, irrelevant, and the world becomes a little bit dumber, a little bit crueler, a little bit less aware of its own problems. This isn't a story about unsocial geniuses. It's a story about intelligent people who tried to engage with the world and found it lacking. They didn't reject society because they thought they were better than it. They rejected it because they hoped it could be better than it was. The question isn't whether they're right to leave. The question is, what kind of world pushes its brightest minds toward the exits? The future depends on our response. We can keep building systems that alienate intelligence. We can continue rewarding mediocrity while punishing excellence, or we can choose a different path. We can create spaces for deep thinking, reward authentic behavior, value substance over style, celebrate complexity instead of fearing it. The choice is ours. The time is now. What will we choose? We want to sincerely thank you for taking the time to watch the video in its entirety. If you're interested in exploring more topics on spirituality, inner transformation, or mind philosophy, don't forget to subscribe to the Top Hidden Knowledge channel for more content on wisdom, spirituality, and personal growth. Or, if you have time, check out other videos on this channel. Until next time.